I'll never forget telling my father I was engrossed in our talk. "Lauren, are you really sure about marrying this man?" he asked, yanking me aside with a serious expression on his face. "I know you adore him, but Larry isn't the perfect person for you, in my opinion." I was perplexed and said, "Why are you saying this, Dad? He respects and loves me. The fact that he is not as wealthy as we are is irrelevant to me." My dad let out a gentle but solid sigh. "You are aware that I am a wealthy person who started from nothing. I would never despise someone for not coming from the same socioeconomic background. But I'm concerned about Larry for a reason. He has a dubious past, and his mother is no better." It surprised me. "What are you saying, Dad? I'm not sure I get it." After he pondered for a moment, he added, "I don't think this man truly loves you. Maybe it's just a father's instinct. He is loving, yes, but I've heard him compliment you on your wealth. When I heard him boasting to his pals that he had bagged the rich brat, Linda merely smiled and nodded in agreement. A stab of pain shot through me. I answered, attempting to defend Larry. "You have to be mistaken, Dad. Linda also cares about me, and Larry would never say something like that about me. If he made another joke like it, she would absolutely reprimand him. But I secretly questioned whether my father's remarks held any merit. I wish I had paid attention to him at times. I was just a young lady in love at the time, desperately trying to cling to something after my mother had died 3 years earlier. I was aware that my dad's time was limited because of his illness. I held on to Larry and Linda because they offered me a reason to live, a sense of direction. My father had worked hard and made wise investments to provide us with a comfortable existence. We were doing okay all around. I had a good job and was paid moderately. However, Larry and Linda didn't have as much. Although Larry came from a poor background, he made more money than I did. I could see that his job didn't pay well enough to make him wealthy, and that troubled him. He and Linda had a taste for ostentatious and pricey items, and Larry frequently lamented his lack of funds to purchase them. I always wanted to use my meager father's money to aid them. After we were married, I even allowed Larry and Linda to move into my home. However, they didn't seem appreciative. Rather, they seemed unhappy. "It's such a shame you live in a small house," they would say. "Why did you buy such a small townhouse when your dad owns a mansion?" I was surprised to see how much I had neglected in the past, since I was so determined to make things work. I told myself everything would be fine, ignoring the tiny warning signs. Ultimately, though, I wish I had followed my father's intuition. I don't have a large income. I'm simply an average office worker with a meager paycheck, yet Larry's dad is wealthy and lives in a mansion. It was really difficult for me to purchase this house, and my dad's assistance with the down payment was the only reason I was able to do it. But Larry was not impressed. "Well, your dad should have gotten you a better place if he helped you out," he remarked. "Your mother undoubtedly left him something to present to you when you grew up." I made an effort to clarify, saying, "I have no rights. Anything that my mom left behind is now my dad's. There was no will, and she died abruptly. Really, it doesn't bother me if I don't receive anything. I am happy with the current state of affairs." Linda sneered. "Lauren, it is an absurd thing to say. A large inheritance would have been wonderful for me. What do you know? We should switch residences with your dad. He doesn't really need all that space if he lives alone, right?" Larry said, "Yeah, Lauren, you should ask him," nodding in agreement. I had a strong protective reaction and said, "Absolutely not. My dad owns the house, and he has the right to a comfortable life for the remainder of his days." "Well, he won't be alive for long now that he's sick," Linda said at that point. "We can see what transpires after a few years of waiting and compromising. After your dad goes away, everything will eventually be yours. You'll have more than enough money to purchase a large home, It was really unnerving how Linda and Larry were already planning how they were going to spend my fortune. Their constant encouragement to approach my dad for more money didn't help either. Larry and Linda simply desired the opulent lifestyle they had imagined, even though it was beyond of our price range. We weren't having financial difficulties. To be honest, I was getting sick of how they were acting. The true drama, though, started after my father died. I was devastated when his cancer battle ended earlier than I had anticipated. Though I was devastated, neither Larry nor Linda provided much consolation. Rather, they showed no interest in assisting with the funeral arrangements and were more focused on the date of the will reading. Worse, they declined to come to the funeral, claiming they didn't care about my dad. I was so overcome with grief and rage at that very time. I kept thinking about my dad's cautions, and I couldn't help but have doubts about Larry and Linda. I started to have my doubts about their motives, questioning whether they had ever really cared about me or if their goals were simply self-serving. I was beginning to suspect that Linda and Larry were merely after my inheritance. They were incensed that they couldn't attend the will reading when it came time. "Why on earth aren't we allowed to be there?" yelled Larry. "This is ridiculous." With equal fury, Linda added, "Yes, this is ridiculous. Since we are family, we are entitled to know what Brian left behind. My youngster should, at the absolute least, be permitted to attend." "Your son doesn't have the right to be there, Linda, because he isn't mentioned in the will," I said, trying not to cry. "Why are the two of you obsessing over inheritance? You didn't even make an effort to attend the funeral." It was ironic how suddenly my dad mattered to them when it came to the possibility of getting some money. I was really annoyed with both Linda and Larry, but what made things worse was how relentless they were. As soon as I got back from the reading, they pounced on me, eager for details. They weren't allowed to see the will themselves, and that only made them more persistent. I was struggling with the grief of losing my father, but instead of offering any words of comfort, they were only interested in one thing. Linda asked bluntly, "So we've been wondering for a while now, how much inheritance did you get from your parents? You must have received a lot of money. Tell us how much." I looked at them and said, "Unfortunately, my parents didn't leave me any money, so I didn't receive anything." Linda's eyes widened in disbelief. "What? You didn't get any money? But your parents were rich. They should have left you something. I don't believe you didn't get any money. You're lying to us. There's no way your parents didn't leave you a single penny." Larry joined in, pressing me. "No money at all? The will didn't even mention you getting any kind of money? You can't be serious." I sighed and tried to stay patient. "No, Larry, there was no money in my inheritance. The lawyer told me that. You can even check my bank balance in a few days and see for yourself." "But what about all their wealth?" Linda asked, her voice edged with frustration. "You're their only child. Who's going to get everything they had?" I shook my head and said, "I don't know about that, Linda. The lawyer just told me I didn't get any money, and honestly, that's okay with me. It was my parents' money, and it's up to them who they chose to leave it to." Linda looked furious and blurted out, "That's ridiculous. You need to fight for that money. It should be yours." "There is no money, Larry," I repeated firmly. "They didn't have much left in the end, and whatever was left, they gave to charity. They had been planning this for a while." Larry and Linda looked completely taken aback, anger simmering just below the surface. I couldn't understand why they were so upset. I almost gave in and told them everything, but something held me back. There was a growing doubt in my mind that my husband and mother-in-law were up to something that wasn't in my best interest. I decided to wait and see how they would react, but they didn't let up. Larry and Linda kept pressuring me for more information, as if they didn't believe what I had told them. The more they pushed, the more uneasy I felt, sensing that there was more to their behavior than just disappointment over the inheritance. I decided enough was enough. I told them firmly that I didn't get any money and even offered to show them my bank account in a few days. A month passed and nothing showed up. During this time, Larry became more distant and stopped being affectionate. He was always checking my account and constantly hounding me for information about my inheritance. It became clear where this was heading. Finally, one day, I decided to put an end to it. I showed them my bank statements and said, "See, I told you that I didn't receive anything. I'm not hiding any secret inheritance money from you. Do you believe me now?" Larry looked at the statements and said, "Wow, our years of hard work just went down the drain then. So her parents weren't rich, and she didn't even get $3,500 in the will. This is ridiculous. I can't believe this." Linda echoed his sentiment. "I can't believe this either, Larry. I stayed in this marriage for nothing. I married Lauren for nothing. It was all a waste of time." Feeling hurt and confused, I asked, "What the hell does that mean?" "Larry, why are you talking like this?" Linda answered for him. "Why do you think he's saying these things, Lauren? Who the hell would marry you without thinking about the money? My son simply married you so that we could rely on your inheritance. Now I see that you didn't even get a penny. I can't believe I wasted 3 freaking years on a useless girl like you. I could have done so much better." I was stunned to hear them speak that way about me. I finally realized that Larry married me for money. My parents were right about him and his mom. They were gold diggers. I was so done with my husband and mother-in-law. I was breaking inside, but what they said next turned me to stone. Linda looked at Larry solemnly and said, "What's done is done, Larry. But now it's time for you to divorce Lauren. There is no reason for you to stay with her anymore. You'll have time to find a new rich wife. This time we will make sure she actually has some money to her name." I was in disbelief. "Are you freaking kidding me, Linda? You're asking Larry to divorce me over money? Larry, are you going to listen to her?" Larry didn't hesitate. "Of course, first I would listen to her. Lauren, I married you so that my mom and I could have a comfortable life. We grew up poor, and I didn't even go to college. I had no way of earning a lot of money." I was horrified. "So you pretended to love me and tricked me into marrying you. You thought my parents would give me lots of money?" Larry nodded, and I felt my heart shatter. "Yes, Lauren, I thought your parents would leave you a lot of money, but now I see that they didn't. It was all for nothing." Everything made sense after hearing those words. All along, my parents were correct. My inheritance was all that attracted Larry and Linda, and now that it was gone, they didn't need me. I realized that in order to move on from their selfishness and deceit, I had to leave them behind. Since I thought that love and trust were the foundation of our marriage, I was eager to discuss anything with Larry. But when we spoke, I realized how mistaken I had been. "Yes, that's what I also thought," he remarked icily. "I could only give my mother the life she had always desired in this way. But now I realize how useless my efforts were. Mom is right. I should file for divorce and continue looking." His remarks were like a ton of bricks to me. I began to doubt my own sanity when he discussed ending our marriage in such a casual, almost dismissive tone. How could he be so emotionless and cold-blooded? I stopped listening to Linda and Larry as they vented their frustrations about the marriage and about me. I was trying to take in what they had just said, but I was too overwhelmed and preoccupied with my thoughts. It was distressing and infuriating to witness Larry's abrupt behavioral shift and their total lack of empathy. I initially experienced a surge of rage inside of me. I wanted to vent out all the hurt and annoyance that had been growing inside of me by screaming and throwing objects. Rather, though, I inhaled deeply and maintained my composure. All right, Larry, I mutely said. You'll get a divorce if that's what you want. I might as well comply with your last request as I've never been one to resist them. Seeing her chance, Linda said, So you'll agree to a mutual divorce? We'll both save a ton of money that way. Furthermore, don't even consider attempting to obtain alimony from my son. We'll battle you all the way through. It's preferable if you merely consent to this. Acknowledging that I was at a loss for options, I nodded. You're accurate. Since I don't have much money at the moment, I've made a decision. I'll consent to a joint divorce as long as you promise to keep all of our assets separate. Every one of us will leave with what we have, nothing more. Without hesitation, Larry agreed. That is in no way problematic. As of right now, neither I nor you have much. I'll sign the divorce papers and won't make any demands of you if you can give up alimony. To be sure we were in agreement, we spoke over the specifics of the divorce. Their relief was evident on their expressions. The fact that I wasn't raising a fuss pleased them both. They probably didn't anticipate my level of composure. In actuality, though, I had been crying on my walk to and from work ever since that day. Before and after work, I used to spend an hour sobbing in the parking lot of my workplace while attempting to gather my thoughts. Larry never asked why I was arriving home late or leaving early for work, and he never noticed my puffy eyes. When Linda discovered I was broke, she stopped staring at me altogether. Their actions have just strengthened my resolve to end the marriage as soon as feasible. I was aware that I needed to persevere and get on with my life. Deeply hurt as it was, I was eager to finish this chapter and go on. I came to the realization that I deserved better after the way they treated me and their seeming lack of interest in our relationship. I should have been with someone who valued me for who I am, not for the money I could make them. Ultimately, I consented to our shared divorce and ensured that each of us retained our personal belongings. Even though it was a difficult process, I felt it was the right choice. I had to let go of the life I believed I had and devote myself to creating a new one untainted by the deceit and greed that had destroyed my marriage. I had Larry and Linda move out of my house and into a neighboring rental when I felt I wanted some space. They moved in fast, and Larry was true to his word and didn't ask for a portion of my house while we waited for the divorce to be finalized. I also didn't make an alimony request. He thought it was a good bargain, but I was unaware of how much I had overestimated the circumstances. On the day our divorce was completed, the whole truth came to light. I went to their new location to give my engagement and wedding rings back. Larry, I just wanted to return these to you, I replied as I gave them to him. I only had negative experiences in this marriage, and I don't want any mementos of it. Larry gave me a startled expression. Are you certain you want to give them back? One day, you could require the funds. Never one to pass up an opportunity to be sarcastic, Linda said. It's hilarious how you're returning the favor. Look where you are today. You must have laughed at our poverty previously. My son is returning the rings to you out of generosity. When your dumb employment starts to pay too little, you may have to sell them somehow. These are inexpensive rings, so we don't want them anyway. Remaining calm, I answered, Linda, what would I need to sell the rings for? I don't feel ashamed. You shouldn't be concerned about my financial circumstances. Oh, we already know, Linda grinned. Probably because they lost everything to poor financial mistakes and left their daughter with nothing. Your parents left you nothing. It was then that I started laughing aloud. Linda and Larry both had perplexed looks. I could see that Larry was taken aback by my laughter, as well as irritated by his mother's actions. Why the hell are you laughing? Yelled Linda. Was there anything humorous, I said? I said, It's hilarious that you think I'm destitute, Linda, looking her square in the eye. It's amusing that you think my parents lost their whole wealth. Naturally insulted, Linda spat out, "Well, of course you're destitute. Not a single dime was left for you by your parents. Since they didn't leave you an inheritance, they must have made a mistake and ruined your life." "I never said I didn't receive an inheritance, Linda," I answered with a smile on my face. "All I said was that I didn't receive any money. In reality, my parents gave me a sizable inheritance." Linda's shocked eyes grew wider. "You say you have an inheritance? What do you mean?" I'm really perplexed. "My folks could see right through you and Larry for what you are. Little gold diggers," I went on. "So they included a covert provision to their will. It said that there will be no immediate financial inheritance given to me. Rather, I received something far more priceless." Now, visibly upset, Larry inquired, "What are you talking about? What caused them to abandon you?" "My parents left me this entire neighborhood as my inheritance," I remarked, glancing at both of them. Larry and Linda were taken aback. "What?" Linda stammered. "This neighborhood is now yours. How could that be true? If such were the case, we would have been aware of your inheritance. Even the estate manager with whom we signed the release with withheld the owner's name." I clarified, saying that everything was kept under wraps because my parents wanted me to wait a year before I could assume complete ownership of the properties. However, I now control the entire neighborhood, including the home you currently occupy. Linda and Larry could not find words. After all of their plotting, the truth that they had been residing in a property I owned was too much for them to bear. At last, the roles had been entirely reversed, and their true nature was revealed. With a sense of pleasure and finality, I turned to go. I had been able to see through their avarice and emerge from it stronger. I was now prepared to let go of them and start over, free from their deceit and manipulation. "My parents wanted me to see if you were in it for the money or the love when I received my inheritance. Since neither of you passed the test, you will now receive nothing from me. My parents had the estate manager take care of the property before I inherited it. You know, they were pretty smart." Larry sneered. "That's not feasible. Nothing you say has any credibility in my opinion. The only reason you're humiliated is that you're out of money." To which I said, "Oh, really, Larry? Are you and your mother of that opinion? Would you mind giving your landlord a call and asking him directly?" In a hurry, Linda and Larry called their landlord to confirm my words. He told them everything, since he was the estate manager in addition to being their landlord. Their expressions were astonished and scared when they hung up. "You misled us." Linda stumbled over her words. "You fooled us into believing you had nothing, but now you're the owner of the whole housing society. How could you deceive us in this manner? You forced Larry to file for divorce and sign papers promising he wouldn't take anything from you because you wanted to retain all of your fortune to yourself." Their nerve incited me to chuckle uncontrollably. It was slowly dawning on them just how big of a mistake they had made, and it was time for some well-earned payback. "It's funny that you're calling me a liar, Larry," I replied. "Pretending to love me, you duped me into marrying you. Linda, you assisted him in this scheme and even advised him to get a divorce from me. You two were the scammers, if anyone was. You inquired about the amount of money I had inherited, and I gave you an honest response. All of this was a miscommunication on your end." Linda made an effort to chat me down. "What has been done is behind us. Would you mind trying again? It would be a tragedy to discard what we have for the 5 years that we did spend together. So now you want me back in your life?" I shook my head. "It's funny how ready you were to get a new girlfriend and start again. I've heard you're seeing a wealthy person already. Larry, don't worry. I'll tell her what a snake you are." Larry and Linda began pleading with me to spare his newfound love. Larry begged me not to ruin his future if I wasn't willing to give him another shot. I told him to go away and warned them that once the land was officially mine, they would be evicted. They began to plead even more in a panic. Over the next few weeks, Linda and Larry continued to visit my home and beg for forgiveness. It seemed unlikely that anyone else would rent to them because they already had an eviction on their record. They were only still residing on my land because I had requested permission from the estate manager. I also told Larry's new girlfriend all I knew. She instantly ended her relationship with Larry since she was appalled by what he and Linda had done. She even presented the texts to me as evidence. Larry and Linda came over and started cursing and calling me names after this disaster. I promptly made a police call and had them taken off my land. I promptly evicted them once the property was officially in my name. They didn't anticipate that I would carry out my threat. I called the police, who issued them a strong warning when they reappeared. In addition, I requested a restraining order. As it turned out, everyone in the town was aware of what had occurred. After being rejected by their friends, Larry and Linda were forced to move out of the city and start over somewhere else. I'm currently relishing my newfound prosperity and am at last free of those leeches that are obsessed with gold.